Welcome to the Midwest Moguls Show, where we talk all things business, real estate, and entrepreneurship. Let's dive into today's episode and make business enjoyable again. Welcome back to another episode of the Midwest Mogul Show. It is your host, Carter Crowley here, and today we are discussing flipping rural houses, flipping places in the absolute middle of nowhere. How do you run numbers on them? How do you figure out how much they're worth? Complete analysis. In this example, on a property that we just bought, we are nearly done with the remodel. It was a very light remodel, honestly. And ultimately how I ran through the numbers on our side of things in order to make financial sense. So what I'm going to do, it's going to be a little bit of a split screen. If you guys are just listening to the audio feed, I will explain things as best I possibly can for the audio listeners. But if you want the full value of this video, feel free to check it out on YouTube, where I give you the photos of the place. I actually break down anything and everything that I am currently doing in order to research, in order to run legitimate numbers on rural houses or places in the middle of nowhere. So let's jump onto the computer, and I have a split screen going on right now. So if you see me looking at the computer monitor, that is why. But the subject property, we are going to look at it right here. So property address N11822 County Road P in Iola, Wisconsin. You guys can look this up on a map. It is literally in the middle of nowhere, 20 acres, and it's a tri-level. So that makes things all that or much more complicated, especially when it comes to comping. That's why I thought this would be a very good example on how to run numbers on rural properties, because tri-level houses are hard enough to find comps. And then you mix in the component of it's a rural house. How do you specifically do this? So first things first, let's just get a basic breakdown of the property. So if I'm looking at my screen, here's an old listing that I'm pulling up for the property. It's 3 bedrooms, 3 full bathrooms, above grade square footage. So everything above ground, 1762 square feet, below grade square footage, 986. So a total of about 2750 roughly. Like it's a little bit less than that, but 2750 for example purposes on the finished square footage. So it's a very, very large tri-level. Now we have 1-car garage built in 1959. And as we're running through all these different things, why I'm explaining the square footage, why I'm explaining the year built, the tri-level, the design of the house versus like a ranch style or a 2-story, because all this comes into play when we are running comps on our subject property. So I have real estate, or I have access to the MLS. I'm a licensed realtor in the state of Wisconsin. I'm actually a licensed broker in the state of Wisconsin. So if you guys would need help on this, feel free to reach out, carter@footfoxvalley.com. I can help you run through some numbers on a place. But otherwise, I am going to be using the MLS for basically comp purposes to get a little bit better clarification on value. So what I'm going to want to do on my side of things is I have the statistics. So I always do what's called a radius search. So I look at active houses and sold houses. The only reason that I pull up active houses is just to see if there's anything similar that's currently on the market that might go pending or sold by the time we list our place for sale. Otherwise, appraisers will only go off sold properties, which is essentially what we're trying to come to the conclusion on. So if an appraiser is looking at a place, they're going to go off of sold houses, similar style, so like kind, similar tri-level homes, roughly around the same square footage. In this case, again, we're in the middle of nowhere. There's probably not going to be a whole lot of tri-levels that had sold or multi-level homes that have sold, so it's that much more difficult. So active and sold comparables. Let's pull up a map. I'm going to actually just do some copy and paste here because I don't recall this address off the top of my head. Okay, you can see there's not a whole lot going on around this place. And the thing when you start to get very rural, like most realtors, they want to keep like a half-mile or a mile radius. That is absolutely not possible when it comes to rural housing. The main reason being is rural housing, there's not a whole lot of houses within a half-mile or a mile radius. So because of that, you probably might have to branch out 5 miles, 10 miles to get like kind property that you are pulling into your search. So don't be afraid to do that, because again, that is what an appraiser is going to have to do as well. And you might even have to extend back more than 6 months on the sold comparable side of things, but test it. We'll show you a real life example here as we're running through things on my screen. But back to that. So let's just do search mile radius. Let's just do 5 miles for the time being. Okay, so it pulls up a map. But now what we want to do, off market date or closing date, like I said, let's go back 6 months. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll actually just go back to the beginning of the year, 7 months. So you can see here in a 5 mile radius around the place, we've only had 5 homes sell in the last 6 months. So let's look at some of these. So do any of these look like they would be a decent comparable sale? This is the only one that seems to be like a multi-level. This is probably going to be the closest comp. What did that sell for? So that sold at $500,000, 27 acres. Let's look into the details. So this is multi-level, like a raised ranch. So this would be a good comp to go off of. So it was listed at 600. It ended up selling at 500. So obviously they were listed a little bit too high, but it had 27 acres, less square footage, but 1 more bedroom. In the garage here, they probably had a bigger garage. So they had a 2-car garage. We have 1 car, less acreage, but that gives us a very good basis to go off of. So that house sold for $500,000. Put that down, make notes on this place, or print off this sheet. We know that comp 1 sold at $500,000. Roughly a little bit more acreage, but all these things are being taken into consideration as we're doing this. So we've got comp 1, 500 grand. Like I said, a little bit more acreage. Let's see what this one's about. This is just a ranch house. Very, very updated. That's a gorgeous place. New quartz counters, tile backsplash. That looks like almost new construction. That's why it's listed at $700,000. And then we have these other ones that are not great. So now what I'm going to do, because we did not find a whole lot of comps for rural property, let's bump this radius out. Actually, I'm just going to go to edit. Let's bump it out a little bit more, include some of the surrounding areas. And now we're back to 29 houses. This is because I'm including some cities in the local area. But now how I want to delineate, at least on my side of things, and I'm not going to do it right now because it might screw up the search results. But again, I'm looking for those multi-level homes. So a bi-level, a tri-level, or a quad level. The first one, luckily enough, sold at 500. It was a multi-level house. Let's see if we can find any others. Because even if they don't have the acreage, what I end up doing on my side of things, specifically for rural properties, is I will go and look at vacant land sales, which is what I had to do actually in this case. So if I know that vacant land is selling at $10,000 an acre for raw land, like just basically unusable land or farmland or what have you, if it's $10,000 an acre, we have 20 acres. That means the land itself is worth $200,000. So again, there's multiple ways of doing this, but rural houses, especially if they're on a bunch of acreage, you can get a little bit clearer understanding of what's going on. So let's look at these again. Do we have any multi-level here? These all pretty much look like ranch houses. Oh, that one's on water. That's not going to be a good one to go off of. And then we have this one, which is a ranch house. I'm just scrolling through the photos here. Obviously, it's on some acreage if they're... So we might even on our side, if we can't find anything for multi-level houses, we might have to go off some ranch style houses and just try to find a similar year built. So this was built in 94, obviously significantly newer than the subject property that we had bought, but that is what we're going to work with. And then let me just see if any of these other ones are coming into play. And the other thing that I do take into consideration on my side, because we can't find any tri-level homes. So this is a perfect example of like, hey, where do we go from here? First things first, I would be extremely conservative when it comes to the after repair value on the subject property. Because if you don't have a lot of comps, typically the appraiser, when you sell the place, is going to run into a similar issue. Hey, it's like, how did you guys come up with the value? I'm not seeing a whole lot of comps for sale. What do I do moving forward, or how do I generate an accurate report? That is a very difficult situation to understand, to overcome, especially if you're a very new real estate investor. So what I will end up doing on our side of things is like, say comps are showing that the place is worth $400,000 or $500,000 or whatever the number might be. I would almost subtract off 10%. If you run your numbers 10% less than what the projected value would be, you should be pretty safe. Now, you might risk, of course, not getting the deal under contract, but it also is reassuring that you're not going to lose money, ideally, if you end up purchasing it, remodeling it, and then trying to resell the place. Because, again, we're in Wisconsin here. We're coming into a little bit slower time of the year, come that fall, winter time frame. So ideally on our side, if we can get this project wrapped up in the next 2 weeks, which we're just waiting on carpet install and cleaning at this point, then we should still be able to sell it in a timely manner, but we don't want to sit on it throughout the winter months. So I did run our numbers a lot more conservative than I typically would, because it's a unique place. It's in the middle of nowhere. Is there a large buyer pool for something like this? Maybe, maybe not. But these are all different factors that you should take into consideration. And if you don't know these items, ask the professional. Don't be afraid to ask a local realtor or a local real estate broker or another investor who you're comfortable sharing details with, because this could make all the difference of you getting the place versus you not getting the place. So back to the computer here. As you can tell, there's not a whole lot of comps to go off of. I can even try going back now on the date side of things, because again, we couldn't find a whole lot of tri-level places that had sold. And let me just put into the criteria multi-level. So we've got 3 results. Fantastic. That's exactly what I want to see. If they load here. Okie dokie. So these are the 3 perfect comps that I can go off of. So we had that first one, like I said, sold at 500. There's a 2-bed, 2-bath here, 1,300 square feet. It almost looks like a barn. This is a barn. So very unique place. Obviously, it's a kind of a pretty cool property. Looks like it is updated, and I'm just quickly scrolling through the photos. We have newer floors, newer carpeting, paint. Honestly, it looks like a little bit newer interior construction, and then you have the whole unfinished barn side of things. So that one sold at $445. That had roughly 38 acres with it. Now we have another property. This looks, again, similar to the subject property. You have a big 3-car attached garage, but it's a very, very small lot. And very outdated. This has the old shag carpeting in it, like probably 1970s-ish style. Floors. Honestly, the appliances are probably older than me. Obviously, I'm not born in the 1970s. We got a 1996 baby here. Shout out to myself. And then I don't think that's carpet in the bathroom. I think that's linoleum. But you can just see on the photos that I'm going through right now, it is very, very dated. That sold at $336,000, 3 bedrooms, 1 full bath, 1 half bath, 2,250 square feet. So now let's break this down together just to understand concepts, to understand psychology behind everything. So we've got the 3 properties so far. One of them was pretty similar in square footage and acreage with the $500,000 sale price. That was a 4-bed, 3-bath, 27 acres. So subtract off 7 acres, maybe roughly $70,000 if it's $10,000 per acre. I'm not going to get into running through comps on land because it's very similar to running through comps on houses. Just get a rough estimate. So we'll say that once we make adjustments, You subtract off $70,000 for the land. That puts it down to 430, but we have another 500 or 600 square feet. So it probably puts it up to 455, 460 at the end of it. So our house is coming in 455, 460 based upon that first house that we looked at. Now we have this barn style place. The barn style place, you can see here, it is 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. So we have another bedroom. It has a lot more acreage, like 17 or 18 acres more, but the house is significantly smaller. It's half the size. So if we run our numbers on, say, the price per square foot, which is ultimately what we're trying to solve for, say it's $100 a square foot. That's what our house is worth. So if we're at $100 a square foot times another 1,300 square feet, that adds about $130,000 in value. But then you have to subtract off the acreage cost. So then it again puts it roughly right around that low 400-ish price point, 435 to 445 or 450. It kind of puts you somewhere in the middle there. And then lastly, we have this other quad level house, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, 2,250 square feet, only on 1.75 acres. So again, if I take into consideration, add another 18 acres, $180,000 to this price point, plus more square footage, it puts us somewhere roughly right around like 500 grand on the resale cost. So all things considered, in my personal opinion, I thought our property that we're buying, we can probably relist for 450-ish on the conservative side. So now as we run through our numbers, I'm actually going to also share with you, we had an appraisal done. In their opinion of value, as you can see, $481,000. So let's check this out together. I don't want to show any confidential information. So contract price, you can see here, we bought it for $347,000 was our offer amount. And I'll show you guys just in a little bit what they had purchased it for in 2017. And let's look at the comps that they used. So proximity to the subject property, they went out even further than what I did. So they went 30 miles out, 26 miles out, 51 miles away. And they are all coming in roughly in that, after adjustments, 450-ish, 480-ish $1,000 price point, which results in the 481 appraisal. Now, in my personal opinion, we are not going to list it at that much. We're going to list it closer to that 450-ish, 455 price, because I think 481, that could scare off some buyers because of the 1-car garage, although it is an extremely, extremely nice property. So if all things are considered, let's just check this out together. Let's do some math. So if it's worth 450,000, I'm going to type that into the calculator here, 450. I'm going to multiply this by 91%. That's for closing costs, insurance, taxes, interest payments on the loan. So that puts us down to 409.5. I roughly think on our subject property, we had about, I think we'll have maybe 11,000 into remodeling or $12,000 into a remodel. So subtract off 12,000, that puts us to 397.5 minus a $45,000 profit. So that puts us to 352.5. Obviously, we secured this at 347, so that makes it almost a $50,000 profit. Nothing wrong with that. We're insulated again from any downside risk. So the appraisal came in at 481,000. I ran our numbers off of 450. And I offered based upon 450. Again, we are putting in that buffer in case anything were to go south on us. In case maybe we underestimated rehab costs, or we run into some sort of issue there, or we overestimated what the property might be worth. We keep it conservative. We don't want to lose money. And now we know we have roughly about a $50,000 margin to work with. So if we get an offer for less than list price, we can still make it work. If we get an offer for more than list price, then hey, congrats to us. We are going to make a shit ton of money. But when all things are considered, a 2,700 square foot house on 20 acres of land, a tri-level house, it's a very, very complicated thing to run through to figure out the numbers on. It's not the easiest to do, and we are nearly done with the remodel on our side of things. So it's very exciting. We didn't have to do a whole lot, and I'll pull up the photos for you guys here so you know what we are working with, because that's always exciting for people. But when the previous owners bought it, which I'll actually show you, so they paid back in 2017 $332,000. We bought it in 2026 for $347,000. Like, not a huge gain. And honestly, this deal, when I provided the offer, they were not interested. Then life circumstances change, situations change, and they ended up taking the offer, which I was super excited about and super grateful for on our side of things. So with all those things in consideration, always follow up on your offers no matter what. Even if they don't sound interested at first, it might end up working out because situations change, life events happen, and you still have the opportunity to purchase a place, even if it doesn't sound too likely from the get-go. And that's why you need to provide offers on every single place that you walk through. So they bought it back in 2017 for $332,000. Nothing crazy out of the ordinary there. We just got what seems to be a decent deal on our side of things. And again, I took that into consideration. Chances are it's probably went up more than a couple percent in value. Even if it went up 10% in value, we are still buying it below that price. And then let's look at the photos here. I'm just pulling it up on my computer quick, and then I will share my screen with you again. So Iola. Okay, so here was the place. You got a nice Harley right in the front yard. I dig it. I dig their style. But really, really pretty house. Very, very pretty house. Nice siding on the exterior. Nice new windows. The interior, like these cabinets, I think look freaking awesome. They're like all the hickory cabinets. I think they look sharp. I actually love the style of this. And you have a huge island here. It's probably about 9 or 10 feet long. So extremely desirable for a family. The cell reception is very shitty when you go out there. So that's something to note. They probably need Starlink or something like that. But then the bathrooms. So nothing too crazy here. That is not a hole in the wall. That's just a sticker. I promise you that. It was a shark theme in there. But all that we did on our side of things was paint. They repainted the entire interior. We had to lay some vinyl plank floors. And then we have to recarpet. And there's about 1,400 square feet of carpeting. So that's why I pushed the budget up a little bit more than anticipated. But our guys were, like the actual contractors who did the painting, miscellaneous drywall repairs, they were in and out with it about a week and a half or 2 weeks. The carpeting guys, that's what we're waiting on right now. That's what's delaying things at the time of this recording. And then we probably do still need to put in a central air unit because that was not there. So as I'm going through this, you can see here the flooring was damaged. We budgeted, or we replaced this, all our guys did already. But it's a very cool house. And there was no closets, so they did have to frame in some closets as well. Let me just see. And then again, we have a little wet bar area. I don't know if that fridge is still there. I've actually only been to the place once since we purchased it. Nice shoes. Shout out to the U.S. Navy. Guy was a former service member, which is pretty cool. And then you have 2 fireplaces in the house, which is awesome. Massive gun safe. And then this is just like piddly details on my side of things. So that is the quick rundown, or probably not so quick rundown, on how we comp out rural property on our side of things. It is a complicated process, but here's the things to consider. We'll rehash this all. So number 1, try to find like-kind property, even if they're not on as much acreage. Because if you can find a like-kind property, you can plus or minus based upon square foot, like price per square foot that they sold for. You can add to your value or subtract from your value. But then look up vacant land sales in the area. What is vacant land selling for? Chances that it sells for a little bit more once a house is on it is quite likely, but just go off of that base pricing, plus or minus it to your home value, and that will help you determine if the rural property that you're offering on will be a good deal or will not be a good deal. And that's how I predominantly determine the offers that we need to make on our side of things. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like and subscribe button down below if you're watching on YouTube. Otherwise, keep tuning in to more Midwest Mogul Show, and I will catch you guys in the next one.